The photographer thought it was part of the plan. That's what she said later, after the chaos. She thought the screaming was a quirky rehearsal trick, that the pounding on the bridal suite door was some kind of edgy wedding choreography, that the groom standing alone at the altar for 37 minutes was an artistic statement. It wasn't. I was left, in full view, dressed in beige linen and false hope, surrounded by gardenias and a string quartet that just kept playing like Rome wasn't burning. People whispered. Chairs creaked. A waiter dropped a tray of champagne flutes, and someone clapped, thinking it was comic relief. I stood still, too still, as if moving would admit it was real. Laurel was gone. No goodbye, no meltdown, no explanation. Gone. And her sister? Her sister was barefoot, holding her heels, walking straight toward me like she had just watched the sky fall and didn't flinch. Do you want to leave? She asked. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Then marry me, she added, like it was a dare. Or a rescue mission. You don't think clearly when your heart has just been kicked in the ribs by someone you trusted with your entire life. But the craziest part? I said yes. That day, at that altar, with her family frozen in shock and the officiant looking like he was about to faint, I took her sister's hand, and we said vows neither of us wrote. My voice cracked. Her lips trembled. I couldn't tell if I was hallucinating, rebounding, or revolting against every molecule of betrayal still clinging to me. People gasped. Someone live-streamed it. I got cursed out by a grandmother. But we did it. I married the sister of the woman who left me. And you probably think that's the twist. It's not. Because 3 weeks later, I opened a parcel that arrived with no return address. Inside was a torn wedding photo, a hotel keycard, and a note that read, "You don't know anything. But you will. Soon." I didn't open the package right away. For hours it sat untouched on my kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. I walked past it 10 times. Poured coffee. Didn't drink it. Read headlines. Didn't process them. I even vacuumed the living room just to avoid having to deal with it. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't something I could ignore. The timing alone was surgical. 3 weeks to the day since the wedding. Or whatever that was. When I finally ripped the brown paper open, my hands were shaking. The first thing I saw was the wedding photo. One of the few taken before the ceremony imploded. I was standing at the altar, nervously adjusting my sleeve. And behind me, just barely visible in the background, was Laurel. Only, she wasn't looking at me. She wasn't smiling. She was on her phone. And her expression, God, it was cold. Detached. Like she was watching something break that she had already decided not to fix. Then came the hotel keycard. Plain. Unlabeled. Room 408. That's all. No location. No brand name. Just that room number and a time. Check what happened the night before. 10:16 p.m. Last was the note. It looked like it had been torn from the corner of a journal. In messy handwriting, just 8 words. You don't know anything. But you will. Soon. I don't know if I threw the chair or if it just tipped over as I backed away, but the crash startled the hell out of me. I stood there, breathing hard, like the walls were about to close in. Here's the thing. I hadn't told anyone yet that Laurel had checked into a hotel the night before our wedding. I only knew because the bridal suite stayed empty until the next morning, and the concierge at the garden venue slipped up when I asked why the bridal room smelled like bleach and alcohol wipes. She said, "Oh, she wasn't here last night. Checked into town instead." When I asked Laurel's mother later, she looked at me like I was dirt under her shoe and hissed, "Don't you dare start digging. Haven't you embarrassed this family enough?" Back then, I chalked it up to pre-wedding anxiety. A lot of brides want time alone. But now I had a hotel key that might prove Laurel never intended to show up at all. That she had already walked away before the music even started playing. I had to find the hotel. I didn't go to June. Not yet. I didn't want her to see me unraveling again. I'd already sobbed on her shoulder enough in the past few weeks. I didn't deserve the strange calm she brought into every room. The way she'd brew tea before I asked or sit with me in silence without needing a reason. I didn't want to taint it. So I went digging on my own. By chance or fate or whatever cruel puppet master is writing my life, I found a charge on our shared wedding expense account from the night before, the Dovetail Inn. Small boutique, placed near the edge of town. The keycard matched. I drove there in silence. Parked. Sat in the car staring at the lobby like it was some sort of temple of betrayal. I didn't know what I expected. Answers, confrontation, maybe even to bump into Laurel herself. What I didn't expect was him. As I entered the lobby, there he was, wearing a staff uniform, clipboard in hand, smiling like he didn't detonate the worst day of my life. Miles, my ex-best friend. My ex-only friend. He hadn't come to the wedding. Sent a text 2 days before saying he couldn't get out of work. I believed him. Stupid me. When he saw me, his face dropped. Not guilt, not shame, just pure dread. Like he'd been waiting for this day and praying it never came. I asked one question. Was she with you? He said nothing, but his eyes, they blinked 3 times. He always did that when he lied. Always. It was his tell in poker, in board games, even in high school when he swore he hadn't seen my locker combination. 3 blinks. 3 damn blinks. I left before I did something I'd regret. But the confirmation was already burned into me. Laurel didn't just leave me. She left me for him. And I had said I do to her sister without knowing I was trying to stitch myself back together with borrowed thread. Back home, I sat in the dark until June came by around midnight with soup. She didn't ask questions, just curled up on the other end of the couch, like she knew the storm had gotten worse but trusted I'd speak when I was ready. I looked at her, and in that moment, I saw something in her eyes I hadn't noticed before. Not pity, not concern, something else. And I suddenly wondered, what did June know? The silence in the living room that night wasn't peaceful. It was loaded, like we were both sitting in the middle of a minefield, and neither of us wanted to be the first to step wrong. June didn't touch the soup she brought. I didn't either. It sat there, still steaming between us on the coffee table, while the flickering light from the muted TV danced across her face. I couldn't stop staring at her. That look she gave me earlier, when I walked in, pale and hollow after seeing Miles. I couldn't unsee it. It wasn't confusion or surprise. It was something more practiced, like she already knew. I finally broke the silence. My voice cracked when I asked, "Did you know?" She didn't ask what I meant. She didn't pretend to misunderstand. She just exhaled sharply and leaned her head back against the couch. "Not everything," she said quietly, as if the walls had ears. "But enough." My skin went cold. "Enough," I repeated, barely able to swallow. June closed her eyes for a second, then sat up straight, her expression tight. I didn't know where they were that night, I swear, but I saw the way they looked at each other. The inside jokes that didn't include you. The way she stopped fighting for you months ago. "You didn't say anything?" My voice was louder than I wanted. Harsher. It cut through the air between us like glass shattering. She flinched, but didn't recoil. "I tried," she said. "But every time I hinted, you just defended her. Like your life depended on believing she was perfect." I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream that she should have told me anyway. But the truth was, she was right. I'd clung to the idea of Laurel more than Laurel herself. I turned a blind eye to the late-night absences, the deflected affection, the way she looked through me when I spoke about the future. I was so focused on getting married, I never noticed I was losing her long before the vows. I collapsed forward, elbows on my knees, palms pressed to my face. "So I was a joke to both of them." "No," June said firmly. "You were collateral damage. That hit differently. There was a certain venom to it. Not aimed at me, at them." Her voice cracked around the words like she'd been holding them in for too long. I looked at her. Really looked. There was more to this. "Why do you hate him so much?" I asked. She hesitated, then looked away, her fingers knotting in her sleeves. "Because Miles always had this way of slipping in where he didn't belong. He did it with my friends, my roommates. And when I warned Laurel once, she laughed and said, 'You sound jealous.' I wasn't. I just knew." I blinked. "Wait. Did you and Miles?" "No," she cut me off. "Almost. Once. He kissed me at a party years ago. I pushed him off. He told everyone I threw myself at him. Laurel believed him. That was it. The unspoken rift between the sisters. Laurel's trust in the wrong person. June's quiet fury. And suddenly, the pieces started clicking into place. She wasn't just angry on my behalf. She had been burned by the same fire, just long before me. I looked at her, sitting there in leggings and an oversized hoodie, her hair tied in a messy knot. No makeup, no filters, just raw, unguarded humanity. And for a moment, I saw a version of her I'd never noticed. The one who had always been on the edge, watching her sister play princess while she got the scraps. The one who never smiled with both eyes, because she knew something the rest of us didn't. That night, we didn't talk much after that. She left around 2 a.m., giving me a look that felt like a silent pact. We'd stop pretending. we'd start being honest. Or at least, I thought that's what it meant. Because the next morning, I got a message request on my phone. No name, no profile pic, just a single video file. And when I opened it, the world I thought was already destroyed. It collapsed again. It was a grainy hallway camera recording, timestamped 10:16 p.m. the night before the wedding. Just like the note said. The footage showed Laurel stepping out of an elevator in a hotel robe. Hair wet. Smiling. Miles followed 2 seconds later. Shirtless. They kissed right in front of the camera. And then she turned, and, this part still burns, she looked straight into the lens, smirked, and flipped it off. Like she knew someone might see it one day. Like she didn't care. I dropped my phone. I actually dropped it. My hands were shaking too hard to hold it. The video looped again and again, playing through the cracked screen like some sick parody of what love used to look like. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't fear. Laurel had planned it. She had wanted to humiliate me. But why? And who sent me the video? Because it wasn't June. I called her immediately. She picked up on the third ring, her voice groggy. I told her what I saw. She went silent. And then, after a long pause, she said something I'll never forget. Oliver, if you think that's the worst of it, you haven't opened the second envelope yet. What envelope? It was supposed to arrive tomorrow, she said. But I guess someone's moving faster than we thought. My chest tightened. What's in it? She sighed. Everything Laurel kept from you. And everything she thought I deleted. I didn't sleep. Not for a second. After the video, after that call with June, I just sat on the edge of my bed with the lights off, watching shadows crawl across my walls like they were dragging pieces of my past behind them. It was surreal, like everything that happened in the last few weeks had been part of some absurd experimental play, and I just now realized I wasn't the lead. I was the punchline. The sun crawled up slowly. I didn't notice the light until it started to sting my eyes. I hadn't cried, not really. Not after the video. Not after June said the words, everything she thought I deleted. That part scared me more than anything else. Because it meant there was more. So much more. And whatever Laurel had hidden, whatever she thought she could bury, June had pulled from the dirt and kept like insurance. Or maybe revenge. At 7:12 a.m., a knock came at the door. Not the kind of knock that says, hey, good morning. This one was sharp. Measured. Like the person on the other side had done this before and knew exactly what kind of impact they wanted. I opened the door and found a delivery guy standing there with a small navy blue envelope and a bored expression. No return address. Just my name, scribbled in sharp, jagged handwriting I didn't recognize. I took it. He walked off. I stood frozen in the doorway. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. I closed the door, locked it, sat down at the kitchen table like I was about to defuse a bomb, and slid my finger under the flap. Inside were 6 things. A printed screenshot of an email exchange. The subject line read, just admit you don't want to marry him. It was from Laurel to someone named P. A second page showing a response from P, replying, of course I don't. But I like what he gives me. A hotel bill for a 5-day stay, 5, leading up to the wedding. Same hotel. Room 408. A still image from security footage. Laurel and Miles again. But this time, in the hallway. Holding hands. Laughing. The date? My birthday. A photo of me, printed and crumpled, with a lipstick mark on the back and 2 words written in the corner. He's clueless. And finally, a letter. It wasn't handwritten. It had been typed and printed. A single page. The font was default, like Times New Roman. At the bottom, no signature. You were never the target, Oliver. Just the proof she needed. She was playing a role for years. The wedding was a performance. You were supposed to fail. But you didn't. You kept loving her. That ruined everything. Ask June what happened in high school. Ask her who first introduced Laurel to Miles. Then you'll understand why this all started. And why it's far from over. I read it 3 times. The words didn't settle, they exploded. I just sat there, stunned, trying to process what it meant to be a proof to someone. To be used as some kind of emotional experiment. Like my entire existence in that relationship was meant to confirm something Laurel needed to know about herself. Or about her control. Or about me. And then there was the last line. Ask June what happened in high school. I picked up my phone with numb fingers and texted her. Me. I got the envelope. Me. We need to talk. Now. Me, what happened in high school? June. I'm already on my way. 15 minutes later, June walked into my apartment without knocking. Her hair was damp, face bare, keys in one hand and a flash drive in the other. She didn't sit. She just stood in the middle of the room, staring at me like she wasn't sure if this was the moment everything would collapse or finally begin to make sense. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said softly. "Not this soon." "Find out what?" I asked, holding up the photo with the lipstick mark. "That your sister never loved me? That she was with Miles for years? That my entire relationship was some twisted science project?" "No," June whispered. "That she wanted you to marry her even though she planned to disappear. That she needed you to play the part right up to the altar. And that I helped her, once." I froze. "You what?" June finally sat down. Her hands were trembling. It was a long time ago. Senior year. She was obsessed with being seen a certain way. Queen bee. Perfect student. She had this thing where she'd fake these tiny meltdowns to get sympathy from teachers, friends, even our parents. It escalated. One time, she told a counselor that a boy had stalked her, just to get out of a class trip. That boy was Miles. My brain stopped. "You're telling me Miles was the victim back then?" June nodded. "At first, yeah. He defended himself, and Laurel got caught in the lie. She flipped it. Told everyone it was a misunderstanding. But privately, she said Miles owed her now. That he had to play along. And he did. Too well. They became something dark. Codependent. Manipulative. And I was stuck in the middle. I didn't even realize I was gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. She told me," June continued, "that one day, she'd fake a whole relationship just to prove she could get someone to love her endlessly, and then vanish, just to watch them break. I felt like I was going to throw up." "And you didn't stop her?" "I tried." June snapped, tears now visible in her eyes. "I tried so many times. But she threatened me. She threatened to say I'd helped. That I was jealous. That I was the one obsessed with you. So I kept my mouth shut until I couldn't anymore. I stood up and backed away from the table, needing space, oxygen, anything." "Why now?" I asked. "Why did you finally speak?" She looked up at me with an expression I'll never forget. "Because she didn't just break you," she said, voice cracking. "She wanted to break me too. But she underestimated something." "What?" June blinked hard. "That I'd fall for you in the process." The room went silent again. But it wasn't cold this time. It was on fire. It's a surreal kind of silence. The moment when someone tells you they've fallen for you while standing in the wreckage of the worst betrayal of your life. I didn't know what to do with June's confession. My ears rang. My throat tightened. I stood there in the middle of my living room, suddenly aware of how small the space felt with all this truth pressing down on us. "You fell for me?" I asked, my voice dry and brittle. June didn't look away. Her gaze stayed steady, even as her cheeks flushed and her fingers clenched the flash drive like it was a lifeline. "I didn't plan to. I didn't want to. But it happened. It happened somewhere between you showing up at her rehearsal dinner with that nervous little note in your pocket and the night you thanked me for staying after she disappeared. It wasn't some big moment. It was gradual. Real." I sank into the couch, arms heavy, mind spiraling. It felt like my emotions were sprinting in 12 different directions: confusion, anger, heartbreak, guilt, and now this tangled, aching warmth I didn't know how to name. June had been the only constant through this entire nightmare, and now I had to untangle what part of that was comfort and what part might actually be something more. But I couldn't go there. Not yet. Not when Laurel's plan still hung over everything like a noose. I gestured to the flash drive in June's hand. "What's on that?" June hesitated for a second too long. Then she handed it over. "Recordings," she said quietly. "From Laurel's laptop. She forgot to log out of her cloud account on my old tablet. I found saved video messages, voice memos, a whole folder labeled experiment notes." My stomach churned. "She actually called it that?" June nodded. "She was documenting everything. Your reactions, your habits, your fears, She stopped. "You should see it for yourself." I didn't want to. I really didn't. But I needed the truth, no matter how sharp it was. I opened my laptop, plugged in the drive, and clicked the folder. There were dozens of files, dated, titled, some labeled with keywords like attachment, control, and even one called threshold test. The first video autoplayed. It was Laurel, sitting in a dimly lit bedroom, wearing a robe, hair tied back, eyes glinting with something disturbingly clinical. "Day 113, she said. Oliver brought up the honeymoon again. I feigned interest and redirected the conversation toward venue lighting. His fixation on long-term vision is strong. Attachment levels increasing. I estimate a 91% dependence rate. Soon he'll be unable to differentiate between loyalty and desperation." I slammed the laptop shut. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to crawl out of my chest. I looked at June. Her expression was stricken but unsurprised. She filmed diary entries about me? I asked. Like I was some science project? She thought she was proving something, June said. That people could be manipulated into loving someone who gave them nothing back. That if she pulled away just right, you'd beg harder. That if she gave crumbs, you'd call it a feast. I felt sick. June crouched beside me. Oliver, you were never the problem. She's broken in ways I can't begin to explain. But she targeted you because you were kind, stable, safe. That's what she hated most. You made her feel seen. And she hated being seen for what she really was. The rage hit me like a wave. Not loud rage. The quiet, smoldering kind that boils beneath your ribs. I stood up, walked to the sink, splashed cold water on my face. When I looked in the mirror above the kitchen counter, I barely recognized myself. I looked like a man gutted by war. Hair messy, eyes sunken, a mouth that forgot how to smile. And somehow, standing behind me in that reflection, was June. Why did she keep all this? I asked. Why save it if she didn't want anyone to find it? June's expression hardened. Because she wanted someone to find it. Someday. Maybe not now. Maybe years from now. It was about control. Even from a distance. Even after disappearing. I turned toward her, finally daring to ask the question I'd been circling for days. Do you think she's watching us now? June swallowed. Yes. That word landed like a cold knife. She's not done, I said, my voice hollow. June nodded. Not even close. I didn't respond right away. My mind was spinning, assembling every memory, every red flag I ignored, every awkward laugh, every missing apology that I'd brushed under the rug. And now I realized. Laurel had never left anything to chance. She didn't just run away on a whim. She orchestrated every beat of my humiliation. And now, somehow, she was still pulling strings. But not for long. Not after this. I turned back to June and said the words that made her go completely still. I want to confront her. Not a message. Not an email. I want to see her. I want her to look at me and explain herself without a script. I want to know if she even feels anything. June opened her mouth, then closed it again. There's something I haven't told you. Of course there is, I said, almost laughing. She reached into her bag and pulled out a black envelope. She sent this to my apartment 2 days ago. I haven't opened it yet. I was scared it would make things worse. I stared at the envelope. She handed it over. It was thick. No return address again. On the back, in delicate cursive. For Oliver. Bring him to me. One final scene. It wasn't over. Laurel wasn't done. But now, neither was I. I didn't open the envelope right away. There was something too deliberate about it. The weight. The handwriting. The fact that she sent it to June, not to me. It was all designed to provoke, to manipulate, to pull the strings of a puppet she thought still danced for her. But I wasn't the same man who stood in linen under a floral arch while whispers crawled through the crowd like insects. That Oliver was gone, or at least buried deep beneath layers of ash and betrayal. Still, my hands trembled as I peeled back the seal. Inside was a single sheet of black cardstock with white ink. Elegant. The kind of invitation you'd expect to a masquerade or a funeral. It read, Suite 709, The Argent Hotel. One night only. No excuses. No audience. Come alone. Or don't come at all. At the bottom was a time, Saturday, 9 p.m. Today was Saturday. I checked the clock. 3:14 p.m. 6 hours. 6 hours to decide whether I was walking into a trap, a breakdown, or closure. I stared at the card for a long time before saying a word. June had been watching me from across the room, unmoving, like a statue carved from something stronger than flesh. But when I finally looked up, her entire body was tense with hesitation. You can't go alone, she said. She said no audience. I don't care, she snapped. That woman doesn't get to dictate your safety. I sat down, pinching the bridge of my nose. I need to see her face. I need to hear it from her mouth. I need to ask why I was worth destroying for sport, or if I ever was anything to her. June crossed the room and crouched beside me. You'll never get a real answer. Not the kind you're hoping for. I know, I whispered, but I still have to hear it. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. Then I'm not stopping you. But I'm going to be close. If you're not out in 1 hour, I come in. Deal. The hours leading up to the meeting passed like molasses, slow, thick, suffocating. I showered, shaved, changed shirts 3 times. Not because I wanted to impress her, God no, but because I needed armor. Fabric. Texture. Something to make me feel like I wasn't showing up completely exposed. The Argent Hotel stood like a silver dagger against the skyline. New, modern, high-end. Of course she chose a place like this. She always needed the aesthetics to match the illusion. The lobby was a cathedral of glass and marble. No one looked up from their cocktails or phones. The receptionist didn't even blink when I walked past toward the elevator. Suite 709 was at the end of a long, carpeted hallway. I stood outside the door for at least 30 seconds before lifting my hand. I knocked once. The door opened instantly. And there she was. Laurel. She looked the same, but not. Her hair was styled loosely, not pinned up like she used to wear it around me. Her makeup was minimal. No flashy jewelry. She wore a plain black dress, like she had just stepped out of a funeral or into one. Her eyes met mine, and something flickered there. Not regret. Not remorse. Curiosity. Like I was an experiment that had gone longer than expected, and she was curious to see what would break next. Oliver, she said with that same lilting tone she used to use when we picked out furniture. You came. I stepped inside without asking. The room was pristine, cold. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A bottle of champagne in a silver bucket. 2 glasses. Always the performance. Cut the act, I said. No audience. Remember? She smirked. Still dramatic. No. Just done. She sat on the edge of the bed and gestured toward the armchair. I stayed standing. I know you got my package, she said. In the videos. In the files. In the hotel bill. You were thorough. She tilted her head. Do you want an apology? Is that what this is about? I laughed short, bitter. I want the truth. Laurel leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing. You already have the truth. I recorded it. Documented it. Preserved it. All the evidence you need. I want to hear why, I said. From you. Why did you do it? Why plan a wedding just to humiliate me? Why keep the recordings? What was the endgame? She didn't answer at first. She looked out the window, watching the city lights flicker to life. Because I could, she said finally. Because I needed to know how far someone would go to love me. Not the curated version of me. Me. The selfish, erratic, manipulative version. I needed to see if someone could love that. I stared at her, stunned. That's not love. That's a hostage test. She shrugged. It was real to you, wasn't it? So maybe it worked. I felt the heat rise in my chest. You're insane. No, she said calmly. I'm honest. I never lied about who I was. You just filled in the blanks with what you wanted me to be. I moved closer, trembling now not with fear, but with the rage of 1,000 silent humiliations crashing at once. You used me. Yes, she admitted, unapologetically. And you let me. Silence fell again. The kind that wraps around your throat like a scarf soaked in gasoline. I shook my head. And Miles? Oh, Miles was never the point, she said. He's just addicted to chaos. Like a dog you keep around because you're afraid of what he'll do if you let him loose. He was convenient. Predictable. Not like you. She stood and crossed the room until we were inches apart. You were always different, Oliver. That's why I picked you. You didn't pick me. I spat. You tested me. She reached up and brushed her fingers along my jaw. I flinched. Too bad you passed, she whispered. That ruined everything. That's when I stepped back. Far enough to breathe. Far enough to stop the rising tide in my throat from becoming something I'd regret. I'm marrying June, I said. Her smile faltered. Just for a second. Then she laughed. Of course you are. How poetic. You want to believe she's different. That she didn't know. But she did. She always knew. We were in this together once. Until she switched teams. My blood ran cold. Liar. She stepped back toward the window, gaze distant. Maybe. Or maybe you've just traded one illusion for another. I left without another word. Outside the suite, my knees nearly gave out. I leaned against the wall and texted June. I need to see you. Now. Her reply came instantly, already waiting outside. Of course she was. I stepped into the elevator with my pulse pounding, my heart shredded, and one question echoing louder than the rest. Had I just stepped out of one lie and into another? The night air outside the Argent was heavy and unseasonably warm, thick like it knew the weight of everything I'd just heard. June was parked across the street in her old silver Civic, engine idling, one hand clenched around the steering wheel, her eyes scanning the entrance like she expected Laurel to send someone after me. The second I stepped out of the rotating doors, she got out of the car and ran straight toward me. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't say a word. She just hugged me. Hard. The kind of hug that says, you're safe now, even if you're broken. But even as she held me, Laurel's final words crawled through my skull like wet ash. She always knew. We were in this together once. Over and over, like a poison chorus. I pulled back slightly and looked at June, really looked at her, and something flickered behind her eyes. Concern, yes, but also fear. Not fear of me. Fear of what I might ask next. June, I said, my voice hoarse, tell me the truth. Her face didn't move, but I felt her entire body tense against mine. Did you ever help her? In the beginning. Did you know more than you told me? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. And that was an answer in itself. I stepped back, out of the circle of her arms. Please, I said. I'm not looking to explode. I'm not looking to punish you. I just want the truth. All of it. Right now. June exhaled slowly, looking down at the pavement. Her shoulders dropped, like she had been carrying a weight for years and finally decided she was too tired to keep pretending it wasn't there. I helped her once, she said quietly. Before you ever proposed. I stayed silent. She was spiraling, June continued. She was obsessed with this idea that everyone only loved her when she pretended to be someone else. She said if she could make someone fall in love with the worst version of herself, selfish, erratic, cold, then maybe she could prove she was lovable at her core. She chose you because you were kind, trusting, dependable. A challenge. And she came to me with the plan. You didn't stop her? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I laughed, she said. I told her it was stupid, but I didn't stop her. I thought it was a phase, that it would collapse under its own insanity. But then she started dating you. And then, it kept going. It got darker. And one day I realized you weren't just a pawn. You loved her. Then why stay silent? I asked. Why let it all unfold? Because I was scared, June snapped, tears suddenly brimming. Scared she'd destroy me the way she destroyed everyone else who got in her way. She always had a way of turning people into villains, even when they were trying to help. I was her sister, Oliver. I saw what she did to my father after the divorce. How she made him out to be some heartless monster when all he did was remarry. I saw her tear down our cousin with rumors after a prom date rejection. I knew what she was capable of. I stepped back further. So you said nothing. You just watched? No, June said firmly. I started collecting things. Screenshots. Messages. Recordings. I couldn't stop her, but I could make sure there was a record. And when she left you at the altar, that was my line. That was the day I decided I'd never cover for her again. I stared at her, my thoughts spiraling. So this whole time, you were holding the keys? Yes, she said, because I thought one day you'd need them. And maybe I wanted to be the one who helped you crawl out of it. I looked away because I knew what she wasn't saying. That she hadn't just fallen for me after the wedding. That maybe, somewhere along the line, her silence had been a way to stay close to me, even if it meant letting me live a lie. And now I didn't know what scared me more, that Laurel had orchestrated my downfall, or that June had let it happen until it suited her to speak. I don't know what to think anymore, I whispered. June moved closer, her voice trembling. Then don't think. Just feel. Do you feel like I'm lying now? I looked into her eyes. No, I admit it, but I'm not sure I trust myself to know the difference. She nodded slowly, accepting that. We drove in silence. Back to my place. No music. No conversation. Just the steady hum of tires on asphalt and a million unspoken thoughts caught in the space between us. Back at the apartment, I couldn't sit still. I paced. I opened the fridge 3 times without taking anything. June sat on the edge of the couch like a guest in someone else's nightmare. You know she's not finished, right? I said finally. That this wasn't the endgame. It was just the mid-season finale. She wants me questioning you. She wants me alone. June nodded. She's trying to collapse your reality so she can be the one to rebuild it. I turned to her. So what do we do? She hesitated. We take it from her. The narrative. The next move. We take it. I sat down slowly, unsure whether I was about to forge an alliance or make another catastrophic mistake. How? She reached into her jacket and pulled out something small. A USB stick. Because Laurel isn't as smart as she thinks. She thought she deleted everything on her cloud. My eyes widened. That's her full archive? Every message. Every recording. Even one she made about me. Her plans. Her targets. She made one the night before the wedding. Called it Final Notes, Collapse Sequence. I blinked. Collapse sequence? June looked at me with calm determination. She thought it would end with you broken and me isolated. But we're still here. That means she failed. Now we use her own obsession against her. I looked at the drive. You want to release it? No, she said. I want you to release it. With your words. Your side. Your pain. I froze. Like? Publicly? June nodded. It's the only way to stop her. Exposure is her only weakness. She needs control. She needs the illusion. You take that from her, and she loses everything. I stared at the tiny piece of plastic in her hand like it was a detonator. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. This was about truth. And it was finally my turn to hold the pin. I didn't sleep that night. Again. But for the first time, it wasn't because I was haunted by Laurel's smirk or that cruel recording of her whispering about my dependence percentage. It wasn't because of fear or betrayal or heartbreak gnawing at the edges of my sanity. No, this time, I was awake because I was making a choice. I stayed up writing. It took hours to shape the chaos into words that made sense. I wrote the truth, not just Laurel's twisted experiment, not just the pain she caused or the lies she built, but my truth. The version with the quiet panic attacks in the bathroom during wedding planning. The way I ignored red flags because I was so desperate to be loved. The nights I blamed myself when she grew distant. I wrote about the betrayal, yes, but also about what came after. About June. About healing. About what happens when someone chooses to stand in the fire with you instead of running from the smoke. At sunrise, I uploaded it. The essay. The files. Everything. I didn't use her name. I didn't need to. The truth had enough weight on its own. The post went viral. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. Raw. Messy in the way real pain is messy. People reached out, strangers, friends, even former classmates who said, we always knew something was off with her, but we didn't know how to help. And most surprising of all, Miles messaged me. One line. She did the same thing to me. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. He didn't deserve the piece of closure. But it made one thing clear. The puppet strings had finally snapped. 3 weeks later, Laurel deleted all her social accounts. Her silence was louder than any reply. No denials. No rage. Just disappearance. Like the mask had finally cracked, and there was nothing left underneath worth defending. And me? I started rebuilding. Not as revenge. Not as a comeback. Just because I was ready to live again. In June? She stayed. Not as some rebound, not as a replacement, but as a quiet, steady presence that no longer had to hide in anyone's shadow. We took it slow. We had long talks, hard ones. We went to therapy together and alone. We made a pact. No secrets, no pretending, no guessing games. Only truth, even when it hurt. 1 year later, I proposed. Not in a grand public gesture. No cameras. No fireworks. Just the two of us, on a quiet morning, sitting barefoot on the kitchen floor with coffee between us. She said yes. And this time, she showed up. Not because she had something to prove, but because she'd already seen me broken and chose to love me anyway. So yeah, my bride left me at the altar. But I still got the love story. Just not the one I thought I wanted. A better one. One that started with ruin and ended in something real.